Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of StressFreeNow.info.
Welcome. This is Dr. Bob. I'm here today without my partner, Christine Wright, but we have a very special guest, Mary Shores, and we want to welcome her, and we know this is going to be an outstanding show for you to listen to. Mary Shores is an award-winning author of the book entitled Conscious Communications. That book is a groundbreaking personal development book published by Hay House and endorsed by New York Times bestselling authors. Mary has taught business and individuals how to harness the power of their words to achieve stronger relationships, deeper connections, higher sales, and happier communication. Mary broke national records by founding an incredibly unique business at the age of 24. Her company is based on exceptional service and employees who care, which combined with her innovative Words That Work system results in more positive business. Mary's award-winning business has garnered over $40 million in 20 years of operation and continues to grow. Mary, welcome. We are so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Bob. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes. So, Mary, since you have an amazing story, can you just tell our guests a little of your story, how you came to be such a dynamic and prolific author?
Sure. Well, my story starts out really unexpectedly because when I was 16 years old, I was out on my own and just put in a situation where I was out on my own when I was still a senior in high school. So I went through my entire senior year of high school living on my own, and then I had a child at a very young age, only 19 years old, who was profoundly brain damaged. And what I mean by that is that she was blind, deaf, she was unable to suck a bottle. She only lived to be a year and a half, but throughout that time, my boyfriend and I at the time lived in and out of children's hospitals almost all the time. I mean, sleeping on the emergency room floors, watching her go through unspeakable pain, and also being around the families that were dealing with childhood cancers and burn victims and just things that you can never unsee. And it impacted my life a lot. I started early on learning about brain science, which eventually turned into an obsession with spirituality, personal growth, and development. And that led me, over the years, through over 20 years, through many twists and turns until I was finally able to secure a book deal with my favorite publisher, Hay House Publishing, and my book, Conscious Communications, was born.
Wow, Mary, I have to tell you, the timing of your comments, I had no idea that what you just said just kind of took me down the rabbit hole, and I'm sure any of our listeners who may be having similar experiences, and what I'm talking about is grieving. I actually am right at this moment personally grieving. My co-host, Christine, the reason she's not on this podcast is because she's in the hospital right now. And then I got some news that she was going to be immediately discharged, which was unexpected. And then literally 30 seconds after that, I received a text telling me that one of my first cousins had passed away this morning at 3 a.m. And Christine and I had stayed at her home literally only 2 weeks ago. And so when you mentioned the situation with the birth of your child and then the early death, what came to my mind was the grief that of any mother to have a child predecease her. Your child was an infant, so your grief would be just unbelievable. No one could possibly know what you felt or were feeling, even after all these years talking about it. So that is just amazing that you could share that with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you. And, I share it from a place of purpose to understand all the good things that have come out of her short life.
Yes, I understand. Let me ask you this, Mary. You're published by Hay House, and right before the interview, I had mentioned to you Louise Hay, familiar with her life, and actually Christine and I had downloaded a song, a beautiful spiritual song from that website. How is it that you came to be published by Hay House, and did you have a chance to meet and interact with Louise Hay?
I first became familiar with Louise Hay in 2011 because I watched her documentary online called You Can Heal Your Life, and from the moment it started playing until the moment it was over, it's about 90 minutes, I just cried, and I cried from every place in my body. I just cried like rain showers, and I felt this unexplainable energy towards Louise Hay, and just knowing in that moment that I wanted Louise Hay to be the person to publish my book. I did get to meet her in 2012 at a women's retreat, Miraval, in Tucson, Arizona, and I just felt very blessed to be able to spend that time with her. It was actually the last retreat that she taught herself. So, you know, that was because she was getting older at the time, and of course now she just passed. So as of the recording of this show, and it's just been quite the journey working with Hay House, and a woman that I admire greatly, and as well as many other people at Hay House that I've met, such as, you know, the directors and editors and everyone involved at that company. Just beautiful, beautiful people.
Yeah, Mary, this would be, what you just said would be an example of a high-level synchronicity, because that show that you're talking about is exactly the show that Christine and I watched. And from that was a song. I remember pausing the show because they played some words. There was a woman walking in the woods. I don't remember exactly the song, et cetera. But I remember saying to Christine, oh, this is so beautiful. I said, I didn't know Louise Hay was doing all of that. And then I believe in some later show, I did not realize that she was working with people that had addiction issues. And so I have been writing, I'm a guest blogger on addictionblog.org, and I've been writing about dual diagnosis when people are addicted and dealing with stress and anxiety and chronic pain and grief. And so I'm pleased to know that you did meet Louise Hay, and that had to be a pretty amazing experience for you, because she just seemed to be such a gentle soul.
Yeah, I said it was kind of like Disney World for adult women, meeting her and being on that retreat. It was very special to me.
Right. Now, you mentioned the brain and neuroscience. That's like coming into my ballpark because I have a background in neuropsychology. So can you give some examples from your book or life that, you know, as you said, you became fully immersed, that something or a piece of information or insight that you gleaned about the brain or neuroscience that an everyday person or our listeners would pique their interest, or something they should know about that they might not be aware of?
You know, I love neuroscience. I love neuropsychology. I love neurogenesis. I mean, anything. I'm a neuro nerd, I call myself. So anything to do with that study, that teaching, I'm just drawn to it. And really the book is a one of a kind book, because my goal of the book was to prove that law of attraction is real and that we create our own realities, but without ever explaining it through the traditional law of attraction, and instead explaining it all through science and deep ancient spirituality. So the book is at this place where science and spirituality meet, because I feel like we're really talking about the same things, only using two different languages.
Wow, that's very interesting, because you've actually touched on two poles which not only am I interested in, but we've had done podcasts. We've had previous guests that have actually touched on those areas. In fact, our first podcast guest 4 years ago was Michael Loge, he wrote the book, The Law of Attraction. And then we also had on twice Dr. Alan Combs, who wrote the book Radiance of Being, and also a book entitled Consciousness Better Explained. And so it is very interesting. The way I look at this is, it's almost like a left brain, right brain kind of thing. The other reason I bring up those two is that, in the academic and scholarly community, there's a raging controversy going on over what you just talked about, which is it science or is it religion, as if those things have to be mutually exclusive. So I have not fully read your book yet. I've actually just been able to skim through it, but I look forward to delving deeply into your book because, as you said, you have some really good neuroscience in there, and then I look forward to having you back on our show when Christine could be on, and then we will really be a yin-yang team.
That sounds lovely.
So, Mary, let me ask you this. We're talking about science versus spirituality. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, I would say science and spirituality. They're both my jam. The thing is that, to me, everything that neuroscience is discovering is just supporting what we've already known for many, many, many years in spirituality. I mean, I just read an article this week that talked about how neuroscience is starting to realize that the inner working of the brain is actually potentially 11 dimensions. And, don't we also know from quantum physics string theory that there are at least 11 dimensions in our multidimensional universe? Well, then you put that with spirituality, and we know that our consciousness exists, and when it passes through this lifetime, it's going to return to another dimension. I mean, whether you call that source or God or the universe or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but to understand that the spark of whatever is you, whatever is me, that could potentially even be the same you and me through the idea of oneness, or that we are all a fragment of the same consciousness, having each a split off or fragmented experience. To me, that's like the deep inner workings of how these two ideas are interconnected.
Wow, you really struck on so many things. I was just thinking about the issue of fragmentation and the vehemence with, some people take diametrically opposed positions, as I was mentioning before, as if science and spirituality are mutually exclusive, two separate things, and they have to be kept separate. So it's very interesting. I guess I want to mention this point in agreement with what you're saying. One of the things that I find very interesting, because I personally, in my research, use first and second person methodologies and methods, and as you know, the standard scientific paradigm is to use third person, quote unquote, objective, and that anything else is typically considered to be subjective. However, in agreement with what you just mentioned, I have noticed that in some of the recent, and by recent I mean in the last 5 years, research in neuroscience, they have started to talk about in a serious way the need for first-person methods. And here would be an example. You're probably familiar with some of the research that came out of Johns Hopkins with the monks, the Dalai Lama monks, where they were looking at states of compassion, brainwave patterns in the gamma brainwave region. So one of the questions that I have always asked people that do biofeedback and neurofeedback is, can you tell me what is the brainwave pattern of a person that's experiencing high anxiety? And so usually that is in the range of 38 hertz to 42 hertz. Well, Mary, that is the same range in which a person is starting to experience states of compassion. So in recent research, what I've been reading is that some neuroscientists are saying that, hey, the only way that we can know whether or not a person is actually experiencing anxiety or compassion is that we have to ask them. Okay? So that's exactly what you're talking about.
It sounds like a good plan. Just ask them.
Right, to ask them. So, Mary, in your work, you talk about this idea of probabilities. How do you define probabilities, and how can you explain how your view of probabilities impacts on our listeners?
Sure. And just to finish up the last conversation we just had, I want to make it very clear to the listeners that you don't have to understand any of that, because when you get two neuro nerds in a conversation, the conversation can go up really high level and maybe not make any sense, because really, what does any of that matter if it's not applicable to your life? Because all of this research is wonderful, but the beautiful part and the impactful part is how do you apply it to your life. And when I talk about probabilities, it looks like this, that I think we can accept that infinite possibilities exist for all of us. And that's a beautiful thing. But when we think about possibilities, we always sort of tend to go towards the good, like there's a possibility that I will become a New York Times bestselling author, but there's also a possibility that I won't. And there's a possibility that I create all kinds of magical things in my life, but there's also a possibility that I create a lot of chaos. So what's the difference between a possibility and a probability? A probability is more likely to happen than a possibility based on the choices you make. Because the choices you make are creating your life one little Lego brick at a time, just like an architect. And so I feel like that's all well and good, but still, you have to apply it to your life. So the question becomes, how do I make choices that are going to connect me to the good things I want in life? And we have lots of processes in the book. So the book isn't like high-level science stuff, but it's like, how do I take what I learned from neuroscience and give you a simple, pragmatic way to apply it to your life to create change now? And one of the simplest and easiest tools in the book is called Cleanse or Clog, which just really means that every choice you make, every word you speak, every action you take, everything that comes out of your mouth is either cleansing you or clogging you, meaning it's either creating deeper connection to what you want or it's driving you further away and causing a disconnection. And so if I want to be on a diet and I want to lose 20 pounds, I don't have to learn complicated diet plans like keto and paleo. I can just look at a piece of food and I can say, will this cleanse me or clog me? But wouldn't that be true for everything? Like everything I say in my relationship, is it cleansing this relationship or clogging it? And how about with my career or my finances or my spiritual growth or personal development growth? Every decision that I make boils down to, will this cleanse me or will this clog me?
Wow, Mary, thank you for that. Audience, on that note, we'll be back in a moment on Learn to Live Stress-Free with today's featured guest, Mary Shores.
Have you been procrastinating about completing an important project or following a treasured dream? Hi, this is Christine Wright. I specialize in helping my coaching clients to lay out clear, goal-achieving strategies. I show you how to quickly build your confidence and uncover and eliminate your habitual patterns of resistance and self-sabotage. Let me help you discover those meaningful insights that will get you to do what works so you can celebrate your successes. Go to stressfreenow.info/contact to let me know that you're curious about how to live your ideal life now. Again, that's stressfreenow.info/contact. Are you dealing with stress, burnout, chronic pain, anxiety, or unresolved grief? Dr. Robert Wright Jr., the Stress Relief Doctor, is an author, speaker, and stress management wellness coach. Co-host of the Learn to Live Stress-Free podcast series, Dr. Bob holds a Ph.D. in Transformative Studies and a master's degree in psychology. He is the author of the first published study to show the connection between stress reduction, grief recovery, and nitric oxide spiking and the relaxation response. He has a wealth of practical knowledge which helps you to relieve the stresses of everyday life so you can live longer and play with your grandchildren. Work with Dr. Bob and he'll give you the tools you need to dissolve your pain points quickly and effectively. Email him to find out how you can start to feel better at stressfreenow.info/contact. That's stressfreenow.info/contact.
Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free as we continue our conversation with our featured guest today, Mary Shores, author of Conscious Communications. You know, Mary, before the break, I have to tell you, you used the word neuro nerd. That's the first time that I've heard that. How did you come up with that?
Oh, I just made it up.
Okay. I love it. That's great to use at a cocktail party. I can say, are you a neuro nerd? That's really cool. Now, you touched on this issue of a law of attraction. It's something that I'm very much interested in. In fact, Christine had worked extensively with Michael Auger when he first started out many years ago, and he has been a prolific author. He has published over, his Law of Attraction book sold over 2 million copies. You know, it's self-published, so it's pretty amazing. The reason I mention that is that you talk about this concept of barrier beliefs. Michael talks about the way beliefs work is that getting to really believe something, you have to allow it. And so he had this extensive discussion about that. So I would like your take and explanation on what you are calling barrier beliefs. How can someone in our audience become more aware of the barrier beliefs that may be holding them back from achieving their outcomes that they would like?
So I know about this because I own a collection agency. And the mission of my collection agency is that I want people to feel good about paying their debt, because having a debt is a psychological burden. And it's a burden that stops people dead in the tracks from pursuing their dreams. It is the ultimate barrier belief, because if you owe money, there is a feeling or a belief deep in your subconscious mind rooted in shame and unworthiness. And that feeling of shame and unworthiness will stop you from applying for the job you want, dating the person you want, applying for a home loan to buy the house that you want. It will alter your life choices. And it doesn't just stop there. So a barrier belief is something that we have over time built a neural pathway to believe based on our life circumstances. So things that happened in our childhood, our environment, these things program us to certain beliefs. And I think that from a psychology perspective, the old way was you would go through years of psychotherapy to sort of figure out your hang-ups. And then, I don't know, but I can tell you that just because I become aware of something doesn't mean that it goes away. The important thing is that you take action anyway, and again, you're always choosing cleansing choices. So I know a barrier belief is like a brick wall in your psychology between what you want and what you're going to actually do. So like the best example I can give for this is for many, many years, I was saying that I want to write a book, but I'm not a writer. And here's the thing. The words you speak are a mirror to your subconscious programming. So saying the thing that I want to write a book, or I want to own a business, or I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want this, or I want that, that is a mirror to your subconscious programming and your desires, almost like it's written on your soul that this is your purpose to do this. But the words, I'm not a writer, are not congruent or not in alignment with wanting to be a writer. In fact, it's the opposite, isn't it? But don't we do that? We say, I want to open a business, but I don't have enough money. Or I want to open a business, but I don't have the time. I don't have the education. I don't have the experience. I don't have the connections. Those words, when you say, but I'm not, or but I don't, are the mirror to your subconscious programming to show you that you have a barrier belief. Now, what is the barrier belief? When I said, but I'm not a writer, I have no idea. I never figured it out, and I don't even care. Because maybe I thought deep down inside that I didn't have the skill set to write a book. Like maybe I thought I had to have a PhD in writing, or maybe I thought I had to have connections in the publishing industry, which I did not. But what I did, and here's the miracle part, here's the way you make miracles in your life. You take action anyway. So what I did was I signed up for a writer's workshop at Omega Institute. And I went to Omega, and I went through a week-long writer's workshop, and by the end of that week, I had started to write some things. And so I just kept massaging that muscle of becoming a writer and learning the skill set. You know, in the old book, Think and Grow Rich, the number one step is get clear on what you desire. The number two step is, what are you willing to give? What are you willing to give to make that desire come true?
Great, Mary. I think that's a great explanation. I have two comments, which while you were speaking, it made me think of this. The first thing is that I have seen recent research which talks about when a person uses words in a sentence, most people, they only focus on the words that come after but. So in the sentence that you gave, you know, like, I want to be a writer, but blah, blah, blah. The but was why it's not going to happen or what the obstacle is. And so I thought it was so interesting that the way you framed your question, I said, well, there it is, you know, exactly what the research is showing, because many people just have that experience where the but. And I think many of our listeners, when we're in an unresourceful state, where we're looking at what can't be done. So, for example, if you say, if a person says, "Oh, I'm exhausted, I really need to take a break," and then a family member or a friend would say to them, "Well, why don't you do this, or why don't you do that? Why don't you get a massage, or why don't you just go to bed?" And then they'll say, "Oh, but." And so thank you for that. I think people can really identify with what you're saying. And so the other thing I want to mention is those words don't, not, and no, that for most people, the subconscious doesn't hear that. And so it's just like when you tell a child, don't eat the candy, don't go outside, don't walk on the grass. And just a quick funny story, many years ago, I was listening to a broadcast, and what they talked about was at a college they had the signs, keep off the grass. And the students were walking through the grass because it was a shortcut. And when they changed the sign to give Earth a chance, then the students stopped walking on the grass. So that's the evidence of the power of words, that what you've talked about in your book. So Mary, at this point, I'd like to thank you for being our featured guest today. Can you tell our audience the best way to reach you should they want to contact you or have you come speak to their group?
Yeah, I'm found all over social media under the name Mary, M-A-R-Y, Shores, S-H-O-R-E-S, and you can find me via my website, which is maryshores.com. I also have a really fun Facebook group called Fearless Ambition. We invite you to join that. And really the best thing to do right now is, if you're interested in what I'm talking about and I want to know more, or you want to know more, please jump on to Amazon. You can grab my book from Kindle or paperback called Conscious Communications. It's also available across the country in many, many Barnes & Noble stores. So Barnes & Noble has been super supportive of the book, and really appreciate if you would go check it out, see if it resonates with you.
Wonderful. So listeners, I just want to mention that Mary has a free offer to our listeners. Mary, could you just tell our listeners what your free gift is to them?
Sure. We created a free companion guide for the book. So the book has many, many coaching exercises in it. And the companion guide is a journal that has outlines for all of the coaching exercises within the book. So we'd love for you to grab the companion guide for free.
Wonderful, Mary. I want to thank you for being on the show today. What final thoughts or key ideas would you like our audience to take away from today's broadcast?
I would really love them to know that your greatest manifestations happen outside of your comfort zone.
Fantastic. So, audience, I want to thank you for listening. And, Mary, I want to thank you again for being our featured guest. And, audience, wherever you are and whatever time zone you're listening in right now, I just want to say again how much Christine and I appreciate your presence, and we trust that you'll benefit in some unique way from the information that was delivered today. We're sure that Mary said some things that most likely resonated with you. And as always, we look forward to receiving your comments about our show. Please let us know if you'd like us to add any additional topics, or if you'd like us to have a guest back on who you enjoyed them. You can contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us, including learning how you can get more results in your day and easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, and anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress Free Now podcast show, and you'll also receive a free gift from us. Call today to schedule your free consultation. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of StressFreeNow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.